Colin Jost had just made a joke about Donald Trump on the Saturday Night Live stage when he received an unexpected message. It didn't come from his partner Michael Che, nor from Lorne Michaels, the producer who controlled every second of the show with an iron fist. It came from someone he never expected, Barron Trump. The message was short, almost cold, but carried an emotional weight that Colin wasn't prepared to process. Take care of Scarlett, not politics. Those 6 words echoed in the comedian's mind as he tried to maintain the automatic smile the audience expected. How did the president's youngest son know about his jokes? Why was he talking about Scarlett Johansson, his wife? As if he knew something Colin didn't. Colin's relationship with political humor had always been sharp but distant. He was the kind of comedian who made biting jokes about Trump, but then went home and forgot everything, as if the stage were a parallel universe where words had no real consequences. Scarlett had always supported him, laughing at the riskiest jokes. Even when she was the target, like in the infamous joke swaps with Michael Che, where Colin was forced to make vulgar jokes about his own wife live on air, while she watched from backstage with her heart racing and hands trembling. She always knew that laughter had a price. But Colin never imagined the price would be collected by someone outside the comedy circle. Barron Trump wasn't the shy boy the media portrayed. In his early 20s he had become an enigmatic figure, rarely seen but always present in the shadows of American politics. No one knew exactly what he thought, what he wanted, or why he had decided to break his silence to send that message directly to Colin. But the warning was clear. There was something at stake, something bigger than weekend jokes, and Scarlett was at the center of it. Colin felt a knot in his stomach as he reread the message for the 10th time. He had never been the kind of man who scared easily, but the coldness of those words made him question everything he thought he knew about his own marriage, his career, and the invisible power that controlled both. That night, after the show, Colin returned home in silence. Scarlett was in the living room, watching an old movie she had seen 1,000 times. She looked at him with that tired smile he loved, the smile of someone who was used to bearing the weight of fame without ever complaining. "You were great today," she said, without taking her eyes off the screen. Colin hesitated. He wanted to tell her about the message, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the fear of seeming paranoid, or maybe it was the fear that she would confirm that Barron was right. That he was so focused on making jokes about Trump that he didn't notice what was happening around him. That he was losing Scarlett not to another man, not to another life, but to the emptiness he himself had created by choosing comedy over everything else. In the following days, Colin began to notice things he had previously ignored. Scarlett was more distant, more thoughtful. She spent hours on the phone, but hung up quickly when he entered the room. She smiled less, and when she did smile, it seemed like a rehearsed smile, the kind of smile she used in interviews when she didn't want to reveal anything. Colin tried to ask what was going on, but she always deflected, changing the subject with the skill of someone who had spent a lifetime escaping invasive questions. And the more she closed herself off, the more Colin remembered Barron's words. Take care of Scarlett, not politics. He didn't know if it was a threat, a warning, or advice. But one thing was certain. Something was about to change, and he didn't know if he was ready to face it. Why would Barron Trump, of all people, care about Scarlett Johansson? And what was Colin about to discover about his own wife that would change everything? Colin couldn't sleep. The message from Barron Trump played on a loop in his mind, like a broken record that refused to stop spinning. He lay in bed next to Scarlett, listening to her breathing slow, steady, the rhythm of someone who either had no worries or had learned to hide them perfectly. He envied that. Colin had always been transparent, his emotions written across his face like headlines on a newspaper. Scarlett, on the other hand, was a vault. Years of acting had taught her to bury her feelings so deep that even he, her husband, couldn't always reach them. He wondered if Barron knew something about that vault. If he had seen inside it in a way Colin never could. The next morning, Colin did something he'd never done before. He searched for Barron Trump online. Not for comedy material, but for answers. What he found surprised him. Barron wasn't just the tall, silent figure lurking in the background of political events. He had become a quiet force in tech circles, investing in artificial intelligence and digital privacy companies. Some articles hinted at his involvement in social media monitoring projects, systems designed to track influence and narrative control across platforms. Colin's blood ran cold. Was Barron watching him? Watching Scarlett? The idea seemed insane, conspiracy theory level paranoia. But the message had been real, and it had been personal. That afternoon, Colin received a second message. This time it came through an encrypted app he didn't even remember downloading. The sender was anonymous, but the tone was unmistakable. You didn't listen. She's already gone further than you think. Check her calendar. Thursday, 3 p.m. The Carlisle Hotel. Colin stared at the screen, his hands trembling. Thursday was 2 days away. He could confront Scarlett now, demand to know what was happening. But something stopped him, fear, maybe, or the sickening realization that confronting her meant admitting he had spied on her. that he didn't trust her, that their marriage had already crossed a line he couldn't uncross. He decided to wait, to watch, to become the detective in his own life, a role he never wanted but couldn't refuse. Thursday arrived like a storm cloud, heavy and inevitable. Colin told Scarlett he had a meeting with his publicist, then followed her from a distance as she left their apartment. She wore sunglasses and a long coat, the kind of outfit designed to blend in, to disappear. She moved through the city with purpose, her steps quick and confident, and Colin felt like a stranger watching someone he thought he knew. When she entered the Carlisle Hotel, his heart sank. The Carlisle was where secrets were kept, where the elite met behind closed doors, where marriages went to die. Colin waited outside for 20 minutes before his courage broke. He couldn't do this stand on the street like a desperate husband in a bad movie. He went inside, past the doorman who barely glanced at him, and walked toward the elevator. His hands were shaking as he pressed the button for the 5th floor. The floor number he'd seen Scarlett's finger hover over before the elevator doors closed. When he reached the hallway, he heard voices. Scarlett's voice, unmistakable, calm but urgent, and another voicemail, deep, controlled. Colin moved closer, his breath shallow, his pulse hammering in his ears. Through the crack in the door, he saw her. Scarlett stood across from a man in a dark suit, his back to the door. They weren't touching, but the space between them felt intimate, electric. The man handed her a folder. She opened it, scanned the contents, then looked up at him with an expression Colin had never seen before, fear mixed with determination. "They know," she said quietly. "They've known for months." The man nodded. "Then we moved faster. Barron bought us time, but not much." Scarlett closed the folder and slipped it into her bag. "What about Colin?" she asked. The man paused. "He's a liability. Unless you bring him in, you have to let him go." Colin's world shattered in that moment. He backed away from the door, his legs weak, his mind screaming questions he didn't know how to ask. Who was Barron protecting? What had Scarlett gotten involved in? And why did it feel like his entire life had been a performance, a joke written by someone else, and he was the only one who didn't know the punchline? Colin didn't go home that night. He couldn't face Scarlett, couldn't pretend everything was normal when his entire world had just been exposed as a lie. Instead, he found himself at a dive bar in Brooklyn, the kind of place where nobody cared who you were or what you did for a living. He ordered whiskey and tried to make sense of what he'd witnessed. Scarlett wasn't having an affair, that much was clear. This was something else, something bigger and more dangerous. The mention of Barron's name, the folder, the fear in her eyes, it all pointed to something that existed far beyond the world of comedy sketches and red carpets. His phone buzzed. Another message from the anonymous number. "You saw. Now you have a choice. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., Central Park, Bow Bridge. Come alone, or lose her forever." Colin stared at the message until the words blurred. Whoever was sending these messages knew his every move, knew he'd followed Scarlett, knew he was spiraling. The thought should have terrified him, but instead, he felt something unexpected, relief. Relief that someone was finally offering him answers, even if those answers came with a price. The next morning, Colin stood on Bow Bridge, watching joggers and tourists pass by as if the world wasn't crumbling around him. At exactly 10 a.m., a figure approached a woman in her 40s. Elegant, with sharp eyes that seemed to calculate his worth in a single glance. She didn't introduce herself. She simply handed him a tablet. "Watch," she said. Colin pressed play. The screen showed surveillance footage of Scarlett from years ago, before they were married, entering a nondescript building in Washington, D.C. The timestamp read 2018. Then the footage shifted meeting rooms. Handshakes with government officials, classified documents being exchanged. Scarlett's face appeared again and again, always calm, always in control. "Your wife," the woman said quietly, "has been working as an intelligence asset for the last 7 years. She was recruited after her work with Black Widow made her a globally recognizable face. The perfect cover for someone who needed access to places most operatives couldn't reach." Colin felt like he'd been punched in the chest. "That's impossible," he whispered. The woman's expression didn't change. Think about all the times she disappeared for filming. The sudden trips, the locked phone, the friends you never met. She wasn't lying to you, Colin, she was protecting you. Colin's mind raced back through the years, the unexplained absences, the times Scarlett came home exhausted but wouldn't talk about her day, the nightmares she sometimes had that she brushed off as stress. He'd always assumed it was the cost of fame, the pressure of being one of the most recognizable women in the world. He never imagined it was because she was living a double life, operating in shadows while he made jokes on national television. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked, his voice hollow. The woman leaned closer. "Because Barron Trump is trying to expose her. His AI surveillance systems flagged her movements 6 months ago. He's building a case, not to help her, but to leverage her. He wants something from you." The pieces started to fall into place. Barron's message wasn't a warning, it was a negotiation tactic. He was telling Colin to choose, protect Scarlett by staying out of politics, stop making jokes about his father, or watch as her entire operation was dismantled and her life destroyed. Colin felt rage building in his chest. "And what do you want?" he asked. The woman smiled, cold and calculated. "We want you to do what you do best, make people laugh. Keep making jokes about Trump. Draw attention. While Barron is focused on you, we can move Scarlett out of his surveillance net. But you need to commit, Colin. No more hesitation, no more playing it safe." Colin looked out at the bridge, at the water below, at the couples taking selfies and the children running ahead of their parents. Normal lives, lives where husbands knew their wives, where comedy was just comedy, where choices didn't carry the weight of national security. He thought about Scarlett, about the woman he married, the woman he thought he knew, and he realized that loving her meant accepting this, the secrets, the danger, the impossible choice between his career and her safety. "What happens if I say no?" he asked. The woman's smile faded. "Then Barron wins, and Scarlett disappears. Not physically, but the woman you love. She'll be gone." Could Colin sacrifice his own safety to protect a wife who had been lying to him for years? Or was loving someone always about choosing them, even when the truth hurt? Colin made his choice. That Saturday night, he walked onto the SNL stage with a clarity he'd never felt before. The audience roared as he took his seat at the Weekend Update desk, Michael Che grinning beside him, oblivious to the war happening behind Colin's eyes. Colin looked directly into the camera and began the sharpest, most fearless political monologue of his career. He went after Trump with precision and bite, each joke a calculated strike designed to pull Barron's attention away from Scarlett and onto him. The audience laughed, cheered, applauded. But Colin wasn't performing for them. He was performing for the invisible eyes watching through surveillance networks. For the young man in the shadows who thought he could control people's lives like chess pieces. Backstage, Scarlett was waiting. She watched the monitor with tears streaming down her face, understanding exactly what Colin was doing. She knew the cost. She knew that every joke he made painted a target on his back, that he was stepping into the line of fire to protect her. When he walked off stage, she didn't say anything. She just pulled him into her arms and held him like she was trying to memorize the shape of his body, the sound of his heartbeat, the warmth of his skin. "You didn't have to," she whispered. Colin kissed the top of her head. "Yes, I did. That's what marriage means. You've been protecting me for years. It's my turn." The retaliation came faster than expected. Within 48 hours, Colin's social media accounts were flooded with coordinated attack spots, trolls, anonymous accounts accusing him of everything from tax fraud to infidelity. His publicist called in a panic, saying major outlets were receiving tips about scandals that didn't exist. Colin knew this was Barron's work, the digital warfare of a generation raised on algorithms and information control. But he also knew something Barron didn't. He wasn't afraid anymore. Fear had kept him safe for years, kept him from taking real risks, from challenging real power. But loving Scarlett had broken that fear. She had lived with danger every day and still chosen to protect him. Now it was his turn to be brave. The woman from Central Park contacted him again with new instructions. "They're moving Scarlett out tonight, a private jet to Geneva. Then she disappears into a new assignment. You won't see her for at least a year, maybe longer." Colin's heart stopped. A year. The woman's voice was clinical, detached. "That's the price of safety. Barron's surveillance network is tightening. If she stays, she's compromised. If you both stay, you're both targets." Colin closed his eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices crushing him. He could let her go, save her life, and spend the next year not knowing if she was safe, if she was alive, if she still loved him, or he could fight to keep her and risk everything they'd built together. That night, Colin and Scarlett sat on their apartment rooftop, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. She told him everything, the recruitment, the missions, the lives she'd saved by playing the role of glamorous actress while gathering intelligence that prevented attacks, exposed corruption, dismantled networks of violence. She told him about the nightmares, the guilt, the loneliness of living two lives and never being fully present in either. "I wanted to tell you so many times," she said, her voice breaking. "But the rules were clear. The moment you knew, you became a liability. And I couldn't risk losing you." Colin took her hand. "You're not losing me. Not now, not ever." He made a call. Not to the woman from the park, not to his lawyers or publicist. He called Barron Trump directly. The phone rang 3 times before a young man's voice answered, calm and measured. "I was wondering when you'd call," Barron said. Colin didn't waste time. "You want me to stop making jokes about your father? Fine, but you leave Scarlett alone. Completely forever." There was a pause. "And why would I agree to that?" Colin's voice was steady, final. "Because if you don't, I'll tell the world everything. The surveillance, the blackmail, the AI networks monitoring American citizens. I'll burn it all down, even if it burns me too. Your father just started his 2nd term. You really want that kind of scandal? The silence stretched for what felt like eternity. Then Barron spoke, and for the first time, Colin heard something almost like respect in his voice. You love her that much? Colin looked at Scarlett, her eyes wide, waiting, more than anything. Barron sighed. Then we have a deal. But Colin, if you ever cross that line again, if you ever make this personal, there won't be a second warning. The line went dead. Colin set down the phone and pulled Scarlett into his arms. She was shaking, crying, laughing all at once. What did you just do? She asked. Colin smiled. I chose you. I'll always choose you. In the end, love wasn't about knowing everything. It was about choosing someone, even when the truth was complicated, even when the cost was high, even when the world demanded you choose differently. Colin had spent his career making people laugh at politics. Now he understood that some battles weren't fought with jokes, they were fought with loyalty, courage, and the willingness to risk everything for the person you loved. Scarlett stayed. And together, they faced whatever came next.